And I'm back again with another interview in the Madeline Soto case, and this time we are going to go over Madeline's biological dad's interview with police. It's a bit of a shorter interview, but he said some things and I want to talk about it. If you have not been following the Madeline Soto case, I will link a playlist down below in the description for you so you can go get all caught up there, because you might feel a little bit lost if you just jump in right here. But before we dive in, hello everyone and welcome to Crime Rush. I'm Inga and I'm so glad that you clicked on this video. I really hope that you will subscribe and also like this video to help the channel out. Please note that this content is intended for mature audiences only, and I get all my information from public sources, so you can very easily do the same thing and form your own opinion. So I'm going to do as I typically do with these interviews, and I'm going to take the most interesting and most insightful parts and share them with you and discuss it. Also, a big thank you to Plunder, The Docket, Grizzly True Crime, and Grey Hughes Investigate for sharing this audio on their channels and for also doing such a wonderful job in bringing so much awareness to this case. Just so you know, this interview took place on the 11th of March 2024 with Tatiana Wallace, who is Maddie's bio dad. And then you will also hear in some parts Tatiana Wallace, who is Tyler's wife, who was Maddie's stepmom. She also jumps in from time to time, and I'll get more into that a little bit later. So without further ado, let's jump into the first clip.
So, Tyler, you are Madeline's biological father, is that correct?
Yes, sir, I am her biological father.
Okay, when were you and Jennifer together?
Are you asking our physical time or like relationship time?
Yeah, relationship time.
We dated when I was 16. I believe we were together for roughly 3 years. And then we ended up having an encounter in 2009 from which Maddie was born.
Okay.
We were not together at the time. I was with my wife. We were engaged. Well, we weren't engaged yet, but it was around that time.
Got it. Okay.
Sheesh. So things are getting a little bit uncomfortable here, because if I'm understanding it correctly, Tyler is saying that Maddie was conceived during an encounter, as he calls it, in 2009 with Jenn. But it sounds to me like he was still in a relationship with Tatiana at the time. And when he said encounter, it just took me back to that whole Jada Pinkett Smith thing where she said on the show to Will Smith that she had an entanglement. I mean, what a euphemism for cheating, right? Tyler did mention, though, that he wasn't married to Tatiana at the time, and he also wasn't engaged to her, but it does sound to me like he was still in a relationship with her when this all took place, which is a bit awkward. But I'm just going to say it the way I want to say it and the way I took it. And that's that he cheated on Tatiana with Jenn Soto in 2009, and that is when Maddie was conceived. And it can't be easy to bring that up with his wife sitting right there. Ouch.
Were you in Florida here, or where were you guys at?
I was at the time of our dating, so when I was 16 years of age and such, we would have been in Florida around Orlando and Kissimmee.
Okay.
I was living with my parents at the time. She was living with hers. At the time of our second encounter in 2009, I would have been stationed, I believe, in Baltimore, Maryland, doing training, and then in Kings Bay, Georgia Naval Base is where I was stationed for my duty station, and I encountered her there.
Okay. Did she live up there or just come to visit? How did that come about?
She was visiting. Our initial encounter in 2009, she was living in New York with her father at the time. I had just gone through boot camp, and we had connected, I believe, on MySpace. And then she ended up visiting me and a group of my Marines around November, and I only know it was that time because it was around the Marine Corps ball, so I have something to tie it to. I'm actually pretty...
So I played the first part of that clip so you could just get all the information on their relationship and how everything took place there. But did you hear that part where he goes that Jenn went to visit a group of the Marines? Like, he said something along those lines, I'm paraphrasing. So did Jenn just know like a bunch of Marines there? Or did he word it that way because he felt uncomfortable to say in front of his wife that the arrangement was actually for Jenn to only come and visit him? I'm leaning more towards the latter because I think this guy seems pretty uncomfortable discussing this all in front of his wife. But what do you think?
You guys weren't actually dating at the time she was conceived. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. Correct.
Okay. How much involvement have you had in Maddie's life?
I have tried to maintain civil connections with the mother. I would say prior to the last 2 years, I normally got to see my daughter about once a year. It was 2 years since I got to see Maddie, and the last time I saw her was October of last year.
And where were you then? Did you come to Florida or?
She came to Texas.
Maddie was sent to visit us in Texas. She traveled unattended. I received her at the airport.
Okay.
So immediately the way this guy talks seems a bit stiff and militaristic. And I know you're going to say, well, he's an ex-Marine. What do you expect? But no, because his daughter was murdered. Okay. So I do expect more intensity, more passion. I'm starting to wonder if all the people who were involved in Maddie's life came together and said, we don't show emotion, or this is not for us. Because the way these people speak about this situation so matter-of-factly, void of any emotion, it's just wild to me. And then he goes on ahead and he refers to Jenn as the mother. And I was like, okay, I caught that heavy drift there. He also goes on to mention there that Maddie visited him in October of last year. And he stayed in Houston, Texas, and Maddie stayed in Florida. So there is quite the distance there. So he last saw her, if you take into consideration, she unfortunately lost her life at the end of February. So there was approximately 4 months since he last saw her until she lost her life. But you will hear a bit later on in this interview that Tyler's involvement in Maddie's life was, let's call it, infrequent.
What was your guys' relationship leading up to all of this?
I tried to talk with Jennifer as little as possible. There was a period when Maddie was first born that Jennifer seemed pretty intent on breaking up my marriage with my wife. And so in the nature of making everybody happy, I just talked to Jennifer as little as possible. Which is why I had so little contact with Maddie growing up. I only just recently started reaching out to Maddie through Skype and stuff, where she was able to, or not Skype, excuse me, what did we use? I think we used Instagram or FaceTime, but we would use video chats and voice chat to start talking. And so I was starting to get a deeper relationship with Maddie, and then this occurred.
Okay, so here the plot thickens a little bit because Tyler mentions that when Maddie was still young, it seemed like Jenn was trying to ruin his relationship with Tatiana. And from the get-go of this interview, it has been made extremely clear that there was tension between Tyler, Jenn, and Tatiana. And I mean, for obvious reasons, he cheated, so I mean, that's on him. But I'm also thinking that Jenn was a new mom, and it's not very strange for moms to want the family, the whole picture perfect family with the mom, the dad, the baby, and the white picket fence and all of that. And then you think of it from Tyler's point of view, which is, I cheated on this girl that I really loved with someone that I didn't really love, and that resulted in a pregnancy and a baby. Now he has to explain himself to Tatiana. This woman still wants him. Tatiana wants him. He's in the middle, and Maddie is left in the dust. So you can see how this all became a very weird and tense situation between the three of them. And I feel extremely sorry for Maddie, because the right thing to do would actually be for these three adults to have put their differences aside and to do what was best for Maddie. But unfortunately, it doesn't seem like that happened. But then he decided he really wanted a relationship with Maddie, and when she was a bit older, he tried to reconnect with her, and it was going well according to him, until Stephan Stearns did what he did.
And you said you started reaching back out to Maddie last year on a more consistent basis?
Yes, sir. She was coming up on the age of 13, and so the last time I had stayed, when she had visited us in October, I was basically talking to her about how she would feel about coming to live with us. in Texas, if that was something she would be interested in. And she expressed that she would be interested, but she didn't say why or what. We just kind of left it at that, and it was something I was going to talk to Jennifer about, but just hadn't yet.
Okay.
This is very interesting because Tyler invited Maddie to go and live with him. But remember what he said. He only started reconnecting with her again last year in 2023, and she went to visit him in October. So if you think about it, Maddie didn't really have much of a relationship or much time with her dad and her stepmom, okay? And if she really wanted to go and stay with him, then that is extremely telling to me because she really didn't actually know them. But it could also be that she didn't want to upset her dad when he asked her. She was probably so eager to have a relationship with him that maybe she didn't want to say no when he asked her something like that because she didn't want to mess up the relationship. But I doubt it. I think it's very possible that Maddie saw this as an opportunity for her to get away from Stephan and her horrible situation at home. And that to me is just devastating because she never got the chance to escape. Which brings me to my next theory, and I don't know if it's true at all, but it's just an idea I got when I heard this. And I was thinking perhaps Maddie mentioned to Stephan Stearns that she wanted to go and live with her dad in Houston, Texas. And just maybe he went into like a blind rage because he couldn't conceive of it or something along those lines. I'm leaning more towards my other theories, but this is one that we can just keep on the back burner.
How was Madeline when she come to see you in October?
She seemed to be in very good spirits, but a thing I kept saying was that I don't know if this will make sense to you, but I can give you the context if you need it. She reminded me of a character from a show called Euphoria, in the sense that there was just an emotional weight about her that I did not understand what was the cause. It just seemed like she was dealing with stuff that a 12-year-old girl shouldn't deal with, but I didn't get to see her enough to really pry, and so I was just trying to ask her like surface level comfort questions to build a relationship with her, but I had no clue anything was going on at that time.
Got it. How long was she out there visiting you?
She was with us for 4 days in October.
Then don't pry with Maddie. Phone Jenn and ask her, hey, what the hell's going on with my daughter? I mean, that's a normal thing to do. You have every right to phone and ask what the hell is going on. Is something wrong? Is there something that I should know of? Or maybe keep an eye out for something because I'm noticing some strange changes or weird behavior here. But again, I'm heartbroken for Maddie because it just seems like with these people, like nobody had that natural parental instinct when it came to Maddie. And I'm going to be a little bit hard on him here because of the comments that he made, because he became quite descriptive and he actually went on to say that she reminded him of a Euphoria character. And I mean, that just tells me that he really picked up that something was off with Maddie, and not just with puberty or teenage years or anything like that. He saw that there was something wrong with his daughter. And I know he only recently reconnected with her, but he was still her dad. I mean, come on. So in this next clip, Tyler will be talking about when he went to Florida, when he heard about Maddie going missing, and he stayed with a friend named Len. And the way he says it almost in the interview is like he's trying to lay out exactly what he did in front of his wife once again, you know. So this is what he's going to be talking about in the next clip, him going to Florida after he heard that Maddie went missing.
First thought was, I'm going to go out to the last known GPS location. Jennifer had sent me like a pin or a GPS location of where Maddie's disappearance would happen. And at that point, Lynn and I had basically discussed the pros and cons of going to look for myself. The pros being that it would make it feel like I was doing something. The cons being that I really had no idea what I was looking for. And then that's when we started seeing like Twitter posts from the Kissimmee and various police departments saying, please do not engage in any public searching. We are currently working on this. And so I feel like I just knew in my heart that shit was going bad. I was staying with Lynn to help me kind of keep my emotions in check and just watching social media, refreshing every so often to see if any news articles had come out.
Once again, as I mentioned in a previous video where I talked about Jenn not going to look for Maddie herself, she didn't go out searching. Tyler says he didn't know what to look for. You don't know what to look for, Tyler? You're looking for Maddie or anything that could lead you to her or any clues whatsoever to help solve the mystery and to find your daughter. Who even discusses pros and cons for searching in this situation? I mean, I would be like, there's no time. We have to get out there. This is crucial timing. We need to go out there and find my baby. And I'm 100% sure about this. I know I haven't been in this situation, but I'd be out there. Okay, nobody could stop me unless they literally come and show me proof that my child was no longer alive.
See each other?
The only time I saw Jennifer was when I made an appearance for, I'm not sure if it was an official funeral, but I have pictures from the location and the name of the funeral house. It was a funeral house. They say that Maddie is going to be cremated in the next couple of weeks, but there was a closed casket that Jennifer's family was there, and I arrived with my separate party. I believe all interactions between me and Jennifer happened on a camera in the main thing of the funeral home. I did not speak with her anywhere else but in the funeral home. I hugged a few of her family members, and I hugged her at one point, but we shared very few words, and I was not a big fan of the hug. It was more for social purposes. But
yeah, I mean, in all honesty, our main focus right now is Maddie. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Not the relationship you and Jennifer have or have not had or whatever. That's
acknowledged.
So.
You see, there he gets all weird again with how he's talking about this, and you can hear it's because of the tension, because his wife is there. He mentions all of his interactions with Jenn and then quickly adds in that it was all caught on camera when he attended the funeral, he gave her a hug, but then he says, but he wasn't a fan of the hug, he just did it for social purposes. Wow, this guy is really concerned about his wife thinking he did something wrong while he was in Florida to assist in the search, and which he didn't do, by the way, but he was there because his daughter had died. I mean, he was there at the funeral. And I understand in normal circumstances that Tatiana wouldn't want him around Jenn. But I mean, this is different. This is his little girl. I mean, Maddie is dead. And this guy is so concerned of how he's wording everything in this interview, making sure that he's not going to upset his wife or that he won't face any consequences after this. I mean, this is not about them. This is about Maddie. I mean, who are these people? Why is everybody involved so weird? And the detective picks up on this. So listen to what he says.
I don't know if some of these questions are difficult because of Tatiana's listening or whatever, but I don't want to, like I said, our main focus right now is Maddie. So
yes, sir. The hardest thing has already happened, which is she's dead. And I am not okay with that, but for the purpose of cooperation and for the purpose of your investigation, I'm willing to go through emotional pain to get there. So just please continue asking what you need, and I will keep you apprised of my emotional condition.
No, I appreciate it.
And then the detective literally calls it out, and he calls it as he sees it or as he hears it. And I mean, it's the truth. Everybody can pick that up, I'm sure. And what do you want to bet? Tyler probably got hell from Tatiana anyway after this call. But again, things are being said in such a calm, weird, matter-of-fact way. I mean, I keep expecting tears, someone being distraught, someone screaming, something along those lines. But hey, I guess these people just don't do that.
I have attempted to comfort her before I realized that Maddie was dead, but that I don't think I was in Florida. That was over the phone when I was like, hey, this isn't your fault, that kind of stuff. But it's one of those things where as more and more information comes out between you and me, I'm becoming aware. I don't know what Jennifer did or didn't know. I don't know if she was aware of this happening or not. And the context of if she knew and was enabling, or if she is as much of a victim as Maddie, will dictate how comfortable I am having any for. Frankly, I'm not interested in contacting her family ever again anyways. But it's one of those, if Jennifer is much as a victim of this as I am, I'm content to just let them live their life in privacy. But I swear to God, if I find out Jennifer was involved and enabled this, I will take whatever legal action I can.
Okay.
I just need a second. I'm sorry. I'm ramping up. I just need a second. Okay, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
So here we do hear a little bit of emotion, but I mean, still not what I was expecting. But it is interesting because he sort of sounds quite suspicious of Jenn here. And I mean, I guess we all are, right? But at the end of the day, we all need to remember that his lack of involvement also contributed to what happened to Maddie. It also failed her because we all know that Stephan Stearns was doing despicable things to Maddie for years.
Any issues that Maddie may have had or has not had, like parenting stuff? Or
about 2 years ago when I was in prison is when I heard that Maddie had received a diagnosis for autism, which is something that I always thought that maybe I dealt with, autistic traits that I have. And the short version of the story here is I believe my daughter did not have autism, and I believe I don't have autism. I believe we have autistic traits that are symptoms of PTSD.
Here he's talking about Maddie's autism diagnosis, and from previous interviews we know that actually it turned out that she only had autistic traits. Now he's saying he believes that it was actually PTSD because he has the same issue as what Maddie had. And it just made me wonder that if you were so sure of this, if you had this idea in your mind, then I'm thinking, why didn't you do something about it? Because it would be normal for him to have PTSD. He was a Marine, so he's had some trauma, I assume. But it's not normal for a 12 or 13-year-old to have PTSD. If they do have it, it must be because of an extremely traumatic event that has occurred in their life. And just in case you caught that part of where he said he was in prison, he was in prison because he stole some ammunition along with colleagues or friends or something, and he was sentenced for that. So it doesn't really have anything to do with this case, but just in case you were wondering, I just wanted to let you know. In this next clip, Tyler is going to be talking about Stephan Stearns and what Jenn told Tyler about him.
I knew he was a biomechanical engineer from what Jennifer told me, which always weirded me out on what the f*** would a biomechanical engineer want with Jennifer. Like, I'm not saying she's a terrible person, but I just didn't see what traits of her would attract somebody like that. And so I do have a working theory with what I think happened. I am aware that this is all speculation, but if you'd like to hear that, I will share with you what I suspect may have happened.
According to Tyler, Jenn told him that Stephan Stearns was a biochemical engineer. I mean, I can just roll my eyes at that. I mean, a biochemical engineer. Stephan Stearns was nothing. In fact, he couldn't hold down a job at all. He's not an engineer. That is such a big lie. So Jenn is trying to make him sound like something to Tyler when in fact he's nothing. He's a monster. He can't even keep a job. But then Tyler goes on to say he was wondering what a biochemical engineer would want with Jenn. And I thought that was kind of a little bit of a low blow. You know, I'm not the biggest Jenn Soto fan at the moment, but I mean, sounded a bit weird coming from him. Again, I think he's saying these things because his wife's sitting right there. And I couldn't help but think like, but you were with her. So why were you with her then if she's so horrible in your eyes?
It has always been my opinion that Jennifer has not been as attentive of a mother as I would like. I feel like my daughter got passed around Jennifer's family for things like daycare quite often, and that whenever I wanted to get into contact with Maddie, it was difficult because I never knew when she was going to be home or available.
So here he's giving his opinion on Jenn as a mom, how she was towards Maddie in his eyes, okay? And he's not saying the most wonderful things about her. But I couldn't help but think, you know what? He's pointing the finger here. And like I said, not the biggest fan of how she mothered or what we know of. But he's pointing the finger at her. And I think he should also be taking a real good look in the mirror himself. Another thing that stood out to me in this clip is that Tyler also mentions the same thing that Stephen Young alluded to. And that was that Jenn would pass Maddie off to family members to take care of. And like I said in my previous video, you know, it sounds like this was a regular occurrence. Like, she couldn't take care of Maddie or didn't want to or wanted to sleep or something, and she would just pass on her motherly duties onto someone else?
It took me a couple of days to have the emotional space, but I started watching interviews of them when they were reaching out to the news outlets. Jennifer told me they were going to reach out to the news outlets when Maddie was missing, so I knew she had done that, but I just hadn't watched the interviews. And when I watched the interviews, Stephan is in a couple of them, and I was watching his body language, but then because I was doing that and some YouTube videos about body language came out, I was looking at Jennifer's body language, and it's like, I saw very strong emotions in her, but they seemed like anxiety, like not grief, not she was waiting at home while our daughter was still missing. Like that, I literally can't wrap my brain around that. It doesn't make sense to me. And so what I suspect happened is something that they couldn't avoid, something like maybe.
But you were also there and also didn't go searching. So, I mean, really. But another thing that stood out to me there is that he mentions that he was looking at the body language of Jenn and Stephan when they were doing the TV interviews, and I myself was doing the same thing. But he actually knows Jenn. He knows how she acts and what to expect from her. And he actually says in that clip, he says that looked to him like she was anxious, not like she was grieving. So noted, and it just shows me he really is very suspicious of her.
Maddie slept in the bed with Tati. I wanted to sleep with them and kind of make a little Maddie sandwich, and she was not very keen on that idea, so she made sure that I slept on the couch. Sometimes we'd cuddle, but that was the sleeping arrangements. Is usually she'd sleep in the bedroom with Tati and I'd sleep on the couch.
Okay, whose idea was it to have what you referred to as like the Maddie sandwich? Who wasn't uncomfortable with it, Tatiana or Maddie?
I believe it was Maddie who was uncomfortable with it. She didn't straight up say, I don't want to cuddle, but she would cuddle with me when it was just me and her, and I believe she'd cuddle with you when it was just you and her, but when we were together, she would become a little bit more shy, is the word I would use.
Gotcha. Okay. Now, when she would sleep at night,
a Maddie sandwich? I don't know, guys. Listen, help me out here. Is that normal? I mean, think about it. When Maddie went to visit him last year, she was 12. Okay, so this is a 12-year-old girl we are talking about. Why in the hell is nobody letting this girl sleep on her own in her own bedroom? What is going on here? Why would you let Maddie sleep alone with the stepmom even? I mean, I don't know what to say anymore regarding these people. And now you're going to hear more from the stepmom, Tatiana Wallace.
I asked her if her mother and Stephan were still together, and she says, no, they're not together. She, loved her mom, because, every time I would, make, a little bit of a snarky comment, she would, correct me and say, everybody's beautiful in their own way. And we never really talked about Stephan when she was around, just to say that they weren't together.
How was her demeanor when she answered that?
It was well, they're not together, whatever. Just...
Would you call that, dismissive?
Dismissive, yeah.
Okay, so upset or, angry or just kind of
Why would Tatiana do that? Why would she say bad things about Jenn in front of Maddie? I feel like that is such a no-no. Even as an adult, you don't do that. You don't speak bad about someone else's mom in front of them. That's just so disrespectful. But, she said she made snarky comments, and then Maddie would stick up for Jenn in such a polite way. That poor little girl. I just feel so, so sorry for her. She sounds like she was so kind and so wise even at her age.
But did you see any change in her personality over the last couple years? Do you anything that stands out?
I felt like the last time we met in October was the only time we ever really saw each other, is how I would describe it. I'm being metaphorical when I say I saw her for the first time and she saw me for the first time, and we really felt like we connected. Other than that, it's always been she hasn't felt like I'm sorry, this is just father talk, but it's I've been watching her grow, but she hasn't felt like a whole person with her own questions and curiosity and motivations until the last time I saw her. She seemed like more an adult than a child, and it's not that it bothered me, it's just that it made me curious on what caused the sudden change in growth. Like, she went from being a silly little girl to being what I would describe as a Euphoria character, which Euphoria is a show all about kids who are dealing with crazy levels of trauma.
You're referring to the show with
I think her name is Zendaya.
Zendaya, yes, okay.
And I watched that show recently with my wife, and then when my daughter came to this, I couldn't stop thinking about that show. Just because I don't know how to explain it. These young girls have this 1,000-mile look on their face that I would expect out of like Vietnam veterans, not little girls. Like, I'm not saying that there wasn't trauma there. I'm saying as a man who has experienced trauma, that's what confuses me, is how so many young girls have that look in their eyes of like...
Once again, he brings up the changes he saw in Maddie. He brings up the Euphoria character again, and he said she had 1,000-mile stare like a Vietnam veteran, which is very descriptive and worrisome. And sure, I guess if you didn't know her well, then you might have thought maybe it was puberty. Maybe she was just becoming a teenager and going through changes. But it really wouldn't have hurt to check up on that and make sure that your daughter was okay.
How often did you have contact with Maddie prior to October?
How often? It was infrequent, unfortunately. I struggle with ADHD, and so did Maddie. And what that looks like for us is really bad time blindness and realizing you haven't talked to people for months and then reaching out awkwardly and trying to.
I mean, I would text her. But
It just feels to me like everyone in Maddie's life had mental health issues. And that is very unfortunate for Maddie because that environment couldn't have been great. I'm not saying that people with mental health issues don't function well. We know that Jenn didn't, and she still struggles with it. She couldn't find, like Stephan Young, her ex-husband, said it was like an experiment for her to just try and find the right meds and stuff. And then, you know, you have to wonder what sort of attention is Maddie getting from everybody who's struggling with this mental health issues, you know. But here he himself mentions also in the clip that his involvement with Maddie was infrequent. So let's do a quick recap here. Bio Dad didn't have much involvement, although he didn't approve of Jenn Soto's parenting, but he didn't intervene. Sleeping arrangements were also a bit weird when Maddie went to visit him, and I mean, it sounds like he has some mental health issues of his own. And the thing that probably bothered me the most out of all of this was the fact that his wife was present for this interview. And if police haven't done it yet, I suggest they go and do an interview alone with this man, because I really felt that her presence dictated the tone of the interview. And I would just like, if I were the police or the detective, I would like to go back, speak to him alone, and make sure that he didn't hold back on anything, or maybe he was too scared to say something in front of his wife. But let me know what you thought of this interview, how you feel about Tyler, how do you feel about Tatiana, and do you think he has a right to criticize Jenn for how she mothered Maddie when he wasn't really even involved? Let me know what you think. But I just feel heartbroken for Maddie all over again. I think this little girl felt like she could trust no one, that no one was coming to her rescue, and it's all just so devastating. But thank you so much for tuning in for this video. Please remember to like this video because it really does help the channel out so much. Please stay safe, and I will see you in the next one.